My name is Jennifer Ellis, and I am the chair of a committee involving social media, blogging, and websites for the American Bar Association Law Practice Division. And something we've decided to do this year is to record some podcasts. And Rand Fishkin, a gentleman I respect very much in the world of search engine optimization, was kind enough to agree to do a recording for us today. So, Rand, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it, Jennifer.
So I've come up with some questions, as you know, ahead of time, and the first thing is you, of course, are with Moz,
Yes.
which is MOZ or MOZ.com for people who would like to find it, and I highly recommend your site for all things involving SEO, search engine optimization. So who are you, Rand, and what do you do? What is Moz?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually the founder of Moz. I started the site as a blog back in 2004, and then it was a consulting company for a while, and transitioned to software in 2007. And we raised some venture capital, and now we're sort of a traditional technology startup. So we do a lot of software. We have a big community of marketers and marketing professionals whom we love to help with making the operations of search engines, Google and Yahoo and Bing, as well as the social networks like Facebook and Twitter, more accessible and more transparent. And that's really my mission, right, is to make the operations of these platforms that control so much of the web's traffic and so much of how human beings interact with the internet available and understandable to ordinary marketers.
Yeah, and I think understandable is the key point. I find that attorneys, we're not always the most technologically savvy of folks. We're focused on other things, as we should
Yeah,
be. We're
as you
focused on
should
the
be.
practice of law. And so sometimes understanding the terms and understanding the very complex world that SEO now is. I mean, it used to perhaps be a little easier, but as we all know, Google's made an interesting time of it for people over the past couple years, and it's become much more challenging and much more of an art form, I think, than it used to be.
Yeah, there's definitely a science to it, and there's an art to it, and I think that's what attracts me to the practice. I love that it's always changing, and I love that I get to apply both my creativity and also my technical skills to the practice, and that you can see the benefits from both of those.
Excellent. So let's assume you're describing SEO to someone who's never heard of it and never
Sure.
applied it. How would you do that? What would you say?
I have to do this all the time, especially at the holidays. When you spend time with your family or my wife's family,
Yeah.
uh, and they want to know, well, what do you really do? Because work with computers just doesn't cut it, right? I think that was a 1990s kind of answer.
Yeah, that's not the right answer for you by any means.
No, no. Well, so the way I put it is this, right? Every day, Google receives more than 6 billion searches, right, from many billions of people around the world. And those people are looking for information, they're looking to make a transaction, they're looking to understand a concept, they're looking for someone or something. And SEO is all about the other side of that, the information providers, the website owners, the marketers, the content creators, the people who have answers to these billions of questions. And SEO is the practice of making that information accessible and making that information appear higher in the search results and drive more traffic. So it's not that dissimilar to the practice of marketing across any space where you're trying to make your content better match your searchers, your users' needs, and you're trying to make it more visible and accessible.
Succinct. There you go. So, do you think, given that SEO applies to law firms?
Yeah, absolutely. People are, a law firm especially is not generally something that people are naturally in tune with as a part of their daily rhythm, right? It's an on-demand kind of service. And most of us who need a law firm don't have one that we already turn to all the time consistently. There are a few people, right, who have professional attorneys obviously Moz has a relationship with a couple of firms here in Seattle that we use and leverage on a regular basis. But I personally, for example, don't have an attorney, and well, hopefully at some point in my longer term future, I will need one.
For good
for
reasons, though.
for good reasons,
Yeah.
right? And potentially, if something untoward happens, something that I'm worried about, I might need one for those reasons too, right? And so when I have that need, the place I'm almost always turning to first is Google, right? And I think that's true for a vast, vast majority of not just Americans, but people all over the world. As a result, since given that there's so much demand and that attorneys and law firms are seeking out that ability to draw in new business, it really makes sense for them to pay attention to SEO and to driving traffic from search.
Absolutely. So if we were in your dream world, um, how would you see lawyers using SEO to drive the traffic to their websites to get business from clients?
Yeah, I think. Look, one thing I will say, and this is true across all industries, SEO is not going to be the best match for every practicing attorney or every legal business. I absolutely don't believe that, right? I think that marketing channels and having a marketing strategy is about playing to your strengths. So if your strengths match up to the things that will help you perform well in SEO, then great, search traffic is for you. And if they don't, then that's okay, but you should find which things they do match up to, and that could be social media, and it could be content marketing, and it could be email, and it could be networking, it could be completely offline, maybe it's advertising that you're great at, maybe TV and radio is really working for you, and that's just fine. I don't want to suggest that SEO is for everyone because it is not. But if you have certain kinds of strengths, and those strengths are at least a little bit of technical knowledge, an ability to influence your website, right? Meaning either a developer you work with who is competent and capable, or someone on your staff who can actually update your site and manage those things. And if you love the practice of optimizing, right, of making things better, if you love playing Tetris, if getting the high score on SimCity was like a religion for you, if you love packing the trunk in such a way that everything fits perfectly, SEO is going to be pretty fun, right? That is it's going to fall into things that you're passionate about and areas where you have strength. And so I think for me, the ideal use for an attorney of SEO is one where they've identified that SEO is a great marketing channel for them, and that their strengths actually match up to the demands of the practice.
So you're saying in some cases they shouldn't use SEO, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
You shouldn't use technology just to use it. You should use it because it's the right match for you, whatever it may be, which includes having a major website and doing all the work that comes with search engine optimization. What kind of
Yeah.
mistakes? Oh, please go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say there might be one caveat to that, which is there's some very small basic things that probably every attorney should do just to make sure that at least they're findable by their own name or for their practice in their region.
Well,
And those,
that leads to the other
like
question.
simple basic checklist,
Yeah.
that's actually pretty easy to do. There's kind of a local SEO checklist, which for most attorneys, local SEO is going to be what matters because it's very region specific.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find that on moz.com/local. It's totally free. But if you just run through that sort of simple checklist and make sure you have those few things ticked off, your address and your website, and you're registered with Google+, that may be all that 70% of attorneys need to do, 60, 70% of attorneys need to do. And then, then we can go into the more in-depth stuff that if you decide that SEO is a real focus, you can think about.
And I'd like to say I've looked at moz.com/local, and I use Moz myself, and that's how I
Okay.
came to ask you to do this interview. And I think it's a very useful tool. And there are a lot of great free tools. When people ask me,
Yeah.
where should I begin when I'm trying to learn about search engine optimization, I always send them to Moz because you have a lot of great free tools there. And there's a lot of stuff that will teach you very basic SEO And if you're looking to hire somebody, there's even some recommendations, as you and I have discussed in the past.
Yes, yes. In fact, I think David Mim, who runs our local division, he used to run Get Listed, and is kind of the local SEO guru. He actually also maintains a list of local SEO providers in a number of regions and geographies that he endorses, and that list can be helpful for folks who are seeking those local SEO type services. So that's great.
Do you think it's a mistake to not have a website?
Yes, I absolutely think it is a mistake to not have a website because there are so many things, so many forms of marketing that are not open to you, and building a website and maintaining a website is so much easier than it's ever been, so much less costly than it's ever been. It just doesn't pay to run or operate a business in this field and not maintain a site.
I agree. I'm certainly not going to argue with you.
Yeah, and I think that's true for everyone who is seeking new business. If you tell me that you're an attorney who has never and will never seek new business, and you also don't want to be particularly easy to get in touch with, okay, you're the exception to the rule. The other 99.9% of us need a website.
So in terms of on their websites, aside from not having one being a big mistake, what are the kind of big mistakes do you see on websites or specifically related to SEO? What do you see that you think, don't do that?
Yeah, so a few things. One, I think that many people, and for some reason, attorneys who have started down the SEO path in particular seem a little more, I don't want to say at risk, but maybe more guilty of committing this error than many other kinds of local sites, and that is investing in a lot of forms of content and I'll say overly optimized for search and under optimized for users types of experiences on their sites. I think maybe part of that comes from this kind of old 1990s understanding of SEO, this thought that, oh, I just need to make as much content as possible, and oh, I need to stuff as many keywords as I can in there, and have all of these different pages of content that no one will actually use or look at or find interesting. That old style of SEO is, we're very far removed from it, right? That's many years ago now, and you really don't need to worry about those kinds of things as much. I think a lot of attorneys can do very well with a smaller website that's more focused, that helps their visitors, accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, and that then offers the kinds of critical information that's really useful to both visitors and to engines. So that's one of the big mistakes I see. Another big mistake that I see, for some reason, a lot of attorneys have multiple websites or multiple kind of homes on the internet that they've made their home base. At one point their LinkedIn profile was like the place where they drove everyone, and then it was their Facebook page, and then it was their profile on about.me, and then it was, and then they sort of interspersed that with their website, but then they built a blog, so they had their blog as their own page. And so Google doesn't know which one is really your site, which is the one that you want people to find you under, and as a result of all that disparate content across disparate locations, they can't identify which is your home base, right? What's the one that we want people to point to, and you don't get the benefit of aggregating all of the metrics and signals if you had just kept everything in one place. So one of the things I tell attorneys, don't make Facebook, your Facebook page your home base. Don't make your LinkedIn page your home base. Don't make any third-party site your home base. Make your website your home, and everything else should point to that. And then that's the page that you should register with Google Plus Local, that you should register with Foursquare, with Yelp, with whatever other services you're using. What's the legal directory?
Avo.
Avo, right? Like everything should all point to one place, and that should be your website, because that's the only one you really get to own and control. Facebook can change how their pages work. Google Plus Local can change how their pages work. Twitter can change how and you don't care because you own and control your property. That's another big piece of advice.
Absolutely, and that's excellent advice. Um, that leads us to social media. Um, do you use it? What do you think of it? Do you have a favorite platform? What do you think lawyers should be doing on social media?
I do. I'm a very heavy user of social media. Probably not teenager level heavy, but
I hope not.
very, 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 certainly very heavy for a working professional. And I have my personal preferences, but the way that I feel for attorneys is that you should go where your customers are. And if there's an intersection between, again, we talked about this before, but places where you're strong and you also have customers, that's awesome, right? So, for example, your customers, almost no matter who they are going to be in Google, right? They're going to be searching. They are on Facebook because everybody is on Facebook. And they're probably on YouTube because we all watch videos.
Of cats.
Beyond that, it's a little tougher to say. Are they on Tumblr? Probably not. Maybe a little bit. Are they on Yelp? They might be. Some people do use Yelp for professional services. Others not as much. Are they using something like Avo? Yeah, maybe the more savvy ones, and depending on who you're serving, yes or no. Are they on Twitter? Well, it really depends. For some practices, specifically if you're in media or something like that, oh my God, yes, they're on Twitter, absolutely. If you are in the world of digital rights for things like photographers, or if you serve a lot of people who do travel or those kinds of things, guess what? They're probably on Google+. Those are very heavy networks for that kind of crowd. Likewise, if a lot of your customers are wealthier, married women, they may actually have a huge use of Pinterest. I have yet to see an attorney that's done great marketing on Pinterest, but maybe you're the first. You could be that person. So, I would look at those demographic and psychographic trends, and I would determine, what am I good at? If you're great at video, awesome, man. Go for it. YouTube is a fantastic opportunity and channel for you. If Facebook is something that really resonates for you and you're already using it heavily personally and you follow brands and you see how they're having success and you think, you know what, even though it's not usual, I think I could be interesting enough to where people would actually follow my Facebook. Awesome. Great. Almost certainly, as we talked about, you probably have to do some SEO, either the light form that we talked about earlier or some of the more heavy investment stuff.
Absolutely. Do you think law firms should be putting money into SEO? Should they be doing it themselves? What kind of warnings? I mean, I get a lot of spam from people, and they almost always have a Gmail account, and they almost always give me the same exact email that they send through the contact form. Obviously, we shouldn't be hiring these people.
No.
But, obviously there's some environments that are more difficult to get results in, and in those environments you might want to hire someone. What do you think you look for, and what are you looking for when you're hiring somebody so you don't get ripped off?
Yeah. So I'll start with the first part of that question. I think every firm should make a determination of, am I doing the lightest form of SEO, and that means all I have to do are kind of cover my bases, and so I'm going to devote a day or a few days to learning the basics myself and practicing those and just getting my website listed on these few sources that I need to, and getting registered with Google Plus Local, and then the rest of it, you know what, I don't need to worry about as much, because I don't need to rank well for divorce attorney Minneapolis or whatever your particular field is and location. And then there's the, I'd say that a majority of folks who, generally speaking, are interested in trying to rank for those types of queries, and they should decide for themselves, should I go in-house? Should I build this practice internally? Should I have someone who is my web marketing expert and they do, at the very least SEO and probably some SEO, some content, some social media, maybe some forms of email marketing, right? I think those practices can work really well together, and having a full-time person on your staff can have a huge amount of ROI. Or is this something that we're going to do more intermittently? And so, every 2 to 3 years, I'm going to do a 6-month engagement with a consultant or a consulting company in the SEO field that I feel like I can trust. And both can work out just fine. I think where I sometimes see people misstep is they go, they essentially need the, what would I call that? They need the focus and the skill and the time and attention of an in-house person, but instead they go out and spend tens of thousands of dollars a month for years on an external SEO provider. And hey, I mean, look, if you're charging enough that you don't really care and you'd prefer not to have to worry about the person in-house and how to train them and their career and all those kinds of things, okay, I get it, that's fine, but just make sure that's a conscious decision, because a lot of times you can spend a tremendous amount of money with an external consultant when you could hire someone full-time internally. So that would be, I think about that. And then to the second part of your question, how do you choose someone externally or hire a great person internally? And I think part of that is about being willing to spend the energy and effort to learn some of the basics of SEO yourself. So you talked about referring to people to Moz for like the Beginner's Guide to SEO. I think the Beginner's Guide to SEO is a great place to start. It'll literally take you, 2 hours to read at the most.
Yeah, it's about like that.
Yeah, it's 50 pages or less, right? And at the end of that, you will have a much better understanding of at least the core principles behind SEO and be savvy enough to ask good questions when you get on the phone or get in a room with someone. Mm-hmm. And then I would urge you to have high expectations for the answers that you're seeking, the answers that you're getting from your SEO professional or consultant or the person you're hiring, right? So you can ask them, hey, explain to me how Google's ranking algorithm works. I understand that we don't understand it perfectly, but explain it to me, right? I want the answers to that. And that person should not only be able to give you a good explanation, but tell you why. And they should be able to answer follow-up questions. And they should be willing to say, we don't know the answer to that. And we don't know because Google hasn't told us, and that's a hard thing to determine. If they're not willing to say, we don't have a lot of these answers, and hey, look, we can't promise results because we don't control it. We can only promise that we're going to do this work, which in the past, historically, we've seen influences these results in this way. You should be looking for that kind of a response, not, we guarantee page 1 rankings in 30 days or your money, like, oh, God.
Yeah, and that's what you get a lot.
Yeah, and you get a lot of that, right? I think in any field like this that's very niche, where there's, it doesn't have a great amount of history, it's a relatively new field, there are very few controls, there's no certifying organization, there's almost no legal demands on it. That can be a great thing, but it can also mean there's a lot of snake oil in there, and you just have to watch yourself.
Yeah, there is a lot of snake oil. So, any suggestions, any tips for general effective online use by legal professionals for marketing, not broadly?
Yeah. Well, I'll give a few tips. I think one of the things that I've discovered works very well is to be unique, right? To be the exception to the rule, and then to highlight your exceptionalism, right? So almost always when I talk to professionals in a field, especially entrepreneurs, people who started their own businesses, an attorney who runs their own practice, there's something unique and special about them, something that they do better or differently than anyone else, some unique value proposition that they have that is very special to them. And when you can highlight that and maximize that, and make that a part of your brand, as opposed to kind of hiding it and trying to be generic and be like everyone else. Like everyone else is the worst marketing strategy ever, right? So, this is one of the things when I talk to attorneys and we look at their website together and they go, I kind of have this like, why does this design look like every other attorney's out there?
Because we're conservative.
Because we're conservative. We don't want to. That's not very marketable.
No, not at all. Right? But that's why.
Marketing, when you think about brands that have success, They are not the brand that looks generic and like everyone else.
Nope.
They are not the brand that looks the most professional. They're the brand that exudes their individuality, right? That exudes that exceptionalism. And when I can convince small business owners, medium business owners of all sizes and shapes to do that, the benefits are extraordinary, right? And so I think that's another one. If you are willing to be authentically yourself, I think you have tremendous online marketing opportunity, not just in SEO, but in social media and content and email and all of these things, especially because people are used to such a reserved, conservative approach from attorneys. Being yourself can really stand out. And I also think it's a hell of a lot more fun, right? Like, how fun is it to go to work and to say, you know what? Yeah, maybe I wear a suit and tie because I need to go to court sometimes, but I'm going to grow a ridiculous mustache, right? And mustache is just one example, but I'm going to be this unique person, right? Every person who has a meeting with me, they're going to remember that I wasn't like what they had in their head when they thought of a corporate attorney or when they thought of a divorce attorney. I was a real person. I think that can be very special, and when you can bring that to the web, when you can bring that to your marketing, to your website, to your social profiles, to the title tags of your pages, to your blog, it brings something really special, something that people can connect with. So that's one of my big tips.
That's a great tip. I think I'm going to have to apply that a little more to my work, actually.
and you have such a phenomenal personality, Jennifer. So that's
must be the Fishkin thing, right? Anything you want our audience to know about your work? I mean, I find your work inspiring, and I'm not just saying that. I really have only been doing SEO myself for a short while, and as a result, Moz, when I discovered it, was just like, oh God, this site, So your mission definitely has affected my work, and I'm appreciative of that, which is why I've reached out to you. Is there anything else you'd like the audience to know about your work, your site, anything? This is your chance to say whatever you want.
Oh, sure. So one thing I will say, especially because attorneys are such a powerful and influential group, especially in the United States, but worldwide. I think one of the things that enables all of us to have this wonderful internet and to have the great marketing opportunities, the great consumer experiences, the great professional experiences that we have on the web is the open nature of it. And as a result, one of the things that I'd like to urge and nudge all of you to do, especially if you love the web the way I do, the way we do, is to support net neutrality.
Oh gosh,
because I think that is that's kind of the basis. And this is particularly important for attorneys, right? Because so many of you have such power to influence political and legislative and legal proceedings, right? That have a real impact on whether local and state and city and federal governments endorse and protect or dismantle and destroy the neutrality of the net and our ability to access all of the World Wide Web.
I agree.
That openness is what makes it wonderful. So if you haven't looked into it already, please look into it. And if you can lend a little bit of your support or time or dollars, that'd be awesome. And I say that with no particular interest other than I love the internet and I want to see it turn into, AOL.
Yeah, I mock when I do lectures. I mock people who still have AOL email addresses and they're using them for their work email.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna mock them, but I hate the idea of like what was it in 1997, right? You get your little CD in the mail, and then the only way to get to the NFL's website, because they didn't have a website, was to type NFL, keyword NFL into AOL, and the AOL experience owned the NFL experience. I think the NFL should get to have its own website, and we should all get to visit it, and they should get to control what's on there. I think that the wonderful thing about Google is we can search and we can find. I'll give you an example. I went to the Vietnamese supermarket near me in Seattle, and I wanted to know what was the best ramen that I could possibly, the little ramen noodle packets.
Yeah, sure.
I used to like ramen when I was in college, and they have like 100 varieties.
Yeah.
So I search and I find this guy who runs a website called the Ramen Rater. He's the ramen, like all he does all day is he just rates different kinds of noodles. How amazing is that, that I can, jump on my phone and find this long tail of the web, noodle rating guy, and he's got his list of the top 10 best noodles, and I found like number 7 on the shelf there and brought it home, and it was delicious. That's awesome. That's the power of an open web.
That's very true.
If we lose net neutrality, we lose the ability to find that long tail, and we're all governed by a few big corporations, a few big websites who own the web. I think that would be really sad.
That's awesome. I'm sure some of our listeners are not going to be in favor of net neutrality, but I think a lot of them probably will. And I think that I'd just like to say, if you
they're the
don't know
lawyers
what
for
it is,
Comcast, right? They have a vested interest. So.
if you don't know what it is, at least learn about it.
Definitely.
And draw your own opinion about what you think is best.
Yes.
But I agree with you. If so. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. I've learned a lot just talking to you for the past 30 minutes, and thanks for giving me some of your very busy time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jennifer. Thank you for having me, and good luck to everyone out there. This SEO stuff is not the easiest thing in the world to understand, but it is logical, it does make sense, and you can do it.
And it's fun. It really is
fun.
fun.
My gosh, that's fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, take care.